Good evening and welcome to another episode of the Grumpy Guy Show. I'm Derek McAllister and tonight we're going to hit you up with episode 6, I Gotta Do One of Those. We're going to talk tonight about some green technology, what California is doing to screw that up, New York tourism, and Apple versus Amazon. Stay tuned and enjoy. Good evening, folks. Welcome to another episode of the Grumpy Guy Show. I'm Derek McAllister.
I'm Ryan McAllister.
So tonight we've got a few topics for you, all picked by me. Hint, hint.
Yeah.
But we'll get through stuff. Gonna be a good show, I think. So what we're gonna start off with is this huge green technology.
Oh, goody.
What do you think of when somebody says green tech? You know, what they're trying to get you to think of is good for the environment. It's so much better than what we currently have.
But it's not.
Not necessarily. You know, they talk about this green tech and how good it is for the environment. You know, they're talking about like windmills and solar farms. You know, because it's not using nuclear power. You know, and it's not using,
which is good for the environment, by the way.
Yeah, to a point. And, you know, it's not using things like coal or natural gas, you know, burning stuff. So, you know, I get it to a point. The problem is, as we're evolving more and more, our electric needs are growing more and more.
Right.
You look at how much power comes out of a solar farm. You know, huge amount of space that's being taken up by these solar panels.
Mm-hmm.
Just to make the equivalent of what comes out of a coal plant, you've got to have a humongous field filled with these things. So you're thinking, that's good for the environment, right? Wrong.
Right.
What does it prevent? In a solar farm, you can't have trees growing. Why?
Right.
Because it's going to block the sunlight. So, what might that what problems might that cause? What do trees do?
They produce oxygen.
Exactly. They filter the air so that humans and other animals can breathe. So now we're getting rid of trees. We're making these huge solar farms. And we're not getting enough electricity out of them to actually keep things going. So then you say, how about wind farms? You know, windmills. Put windmills up. Well, there's problems with those. They have to be way up in the air, which means they're disturbing upper atmospheric winds, right?
Right.
But not only that, they have to have a huge area around them cleared. Why? Well, because there's got to be a lot of space for the wind to actually get to the blades of the turbine, just to get it to spin. And then to top it off, the current technology we have, guess where the other problem is?
Where?
There's limits on how strong the wind can be before they have to be turned off. That's right. If the wind is too strong, they got to turn the things off, otherwise it's going to damage the blades.
Seriously?
Seriously. You go and you look at a windmill when there's, just a decent breeze. And you'll actually see the blades are bent. They're curved back quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because there's pressure on them. So what's happening? Well, you got that pressure going. You're screwing up things behind them as far as the wind. They're not getting everything, so it's just causing problems. Okay, well, you got the solution, right?
Mm-hmm.
How about we go with hydro plants? Go ahead. Take a guess at what the problem might be with hydro plants.
I don't really know. Space?
No, not so much space. Well, in a way, but the problem with hydro plants is they create a reservoir.
Mm-hmm.
Which covers land. It makes a lake. A huge lake. So now you've just eliminated all of that natural resources. And guess what? More trees are gone. So, again, not a perfect solution either. Is there a perfect solution? No, there's not.
Mm-hmm.
Do I think that there's potential with things like solar panels or wind farms?
Of course.
There's potential. The problem is, just to be pushing it as hard as it's being pushed by the government now, it's just ridiculous. Our technology isn't ready for that. But let's go with the rest of the green technology. Go beyond just producing the power, okay?
Okay.
Let's talk about cars.
Uh-huh.
So, there's a huge push to suddenly go with fully electric cars.
Yep.
Not saying it's horrible. But again, we're limited with our current technology. Our current battery technology isn't that great. You look at these Teslas, just go with them because they're the biggest brand in the
by a mile
cars at this point.
By about a mile.
Yeah, but the problem Tesla has is the old companies like Ford and GM. They've got a lot more money to turn things around,
Mm-hmm.
and they're going to. They're starting to. But here's the thing. You look at it, you get a 200-mile range with a Tesla.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some people might think, well, I never want to go more than 200 miles. But here's the thing. That 200 miles is in perfect conditions on flat roads.
Right.
Have you ever been in a place where you've got perfect conditions on a flat road?
No.
And here's the thing with it. Those perfect conditions mean that you don't have to run your AC, you don't have to run your heat, you don't have to run your lights. Perfect meaning is perfect daylight and temperature is perfect. That's where you get 200-mile range. Not in something like the middle of a snowstorm or heavy rains or, let's say desert heat. You're not going to get your perfect ideal range in those time periods.
Mm-hmm.
You're just going to end up stuck.
Stranded.
Yeah. And that's why there's a thing called range anxiety. What's that? Well, that's when you're constantly staring at your battery level to see how much you have left. Which leads me right to the next thing. There isn't a sufficient supply out there of charging stations to handle everybody having an electric car.
Mm-hmm.
Because here's where it really gets bad. You need an hour to fully charge a car, and that's not even from zero. I'm not sure exactly where that's coming from at a starting point, but it's above zero.
Mm-hmm.
How is somebody, such as myself, who likes to drive, going to actually get somewhere? Do you know how long it would take to get across the country if you can only go 200 miles and you have to stop for an hour and then go another 200 miles and stop for another hour?
That could take you weeks.
It's going to take you an awful long time. Where somebody like me with a gasoline-powered engine, I can go and I can drive 1,000 miles in a day. If I have to go 200 miles and stop for an hour, and then 200 miles and stop for an hour, I'm not going to get 1,000 miles in a day. I'm going to be lucky if I get 500 miles in a day.
Yep.
So, there's major limits. But what do they say? Well, that's why you're supposed to take an airplane to do that. Okay. I haven't seen any fully electric airplanes, and, I'm not so sure that I want to be in an airplane where a pilot's constantly going with range anxiety, hoping that he can actually make it to the airport that he's supposed to. Just ridiculous.
Yep.
But then you look at what's happened recently with the serious heat wave going on over on the West Coast.
They've been going through a heat wave?
Oh, California's been really bad.
It's just California.
Well,
Not surprising.
It's not just California. It's the entire west side of the country.
Really?
Yeah, Las Vegas had temperatures up around 120 degrees.
How do you expect? It's Nevada.
Yeah, but they don't get temperatures like that. Low temperatures for the day in the mid-90s. That's at midnight. Just serious heat waves. So what did California do?
Sounds like Arizona in like a month.
Yeah, it's that whole area.
It sounds like the average for Arizona in about a month.
It's like the lower 2/3 of California, all of Utah. It's that whole area there, just getting a massive heat wave. So what did
Yikes.
California do?
What did they do?
They said, we need you to conserve electricity.
Seriously?
Seriously. The state that's pushing harder for fully electric vehicles
Of course.
is saying, we need you to conserve electricity because we've got a heat wave and we got to make sure that some people are actually comfortable. You can't have it both ways, California. You can't have fully electric cars and conserve energy just because it's hot. Pick one.
Let's be honest, if New York was going through the same thing, then, well, Cuomo would do the exact same thing.
It's going to happen because New York always follows California's lead.
And Illinois follows New York.
Yeah, and I get it. I understand. Fully electric cars, they're coming. But we're just not ready for fully electric cars. What we're ready for is some form of hybrid where 90% of things are done electric. So that I'm not sitting there with range anxiety over, when's my battery going to die? Am I going to make it home?
Mm-hmm.
You get something like the Chevy Volt, where
I thought they didn't make those anymore.
they might not. I'm not positive. But the whole thing is, they have the only drive mechanism, the only thing that drives the wheels are electric motors.
Mm-hmm.
The hybrid part is when your battery dies, an engine starts up, and that engine's sole purpose is to produce electricity. So you still get a very good range. Worst case scenario, you run out of gas, but you go to a gas station, you fill up, and I think it was like a 5-gallon tank or something like that, and then you drive another several hundred miles. 5-gallon tank is going to take you just a few minutes to fill.
Mm-hmm.
And in the worst case scenario, you decide, well, I'm going to stop to eat. I'll stop and I'll plug in and charge it up. That's the way that we should be looking. As a transition. There's got to be a transition period. It can't be a cold stop of, yep, no more gas cars. We just don't have the infrastructure built for it. We don't have the capability to charge fast enough. And the battery technology, the batteries just, they can't hold enough to be useful.
Mm-hmm.
So, and this whole thing with California, with the conserve electricity crap, that goes right back to the huge issue that there is. Back in the 70s, 80s, 60s, even the early 90s, there wasn't air conditioning everywhere. It was a luxury.
Right.
Now, people, younger people like you've never lived your life where there isn't air conditioning every place.
Yep.
Air conditioning used to be it was a luxury item, a luxury add-on for a car.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't a cheap add-on. It was $1,000 back in the 80s.
Yikes.
Yeah. And now it's on every car. There was a study that they spoke to some people who were visiting from Southeast Asia. And they said, what's the biggest thing that you find odd here in the United States? And the overwhelming response was Americans' fascination with air conditioning.
Huh.
We don't tend to open windows. The house that we're in, windows were airtight when we first moved in.
Right.
We moved in December, so it's cold.
Yep.
It was great. But it came time for, spring, and I like to open the windows, let things air out.
Mm-hmm.
The reason the windows were airtight is because they were all painted shut.
Really?
Yes, they were all painted shut. And so that tells you what the mentality is. And you see this in a lot of places, not just New York. You see it all over the place where people,
Of course.
paint windows shut because I never need to open them. I need to open doors, but I don't need to open a window. No, why would I do that? I've got heat and I've got air conditioning. It's just insane.
That tells you they're not prepared for if a fire breaks out.
Yeah, and it's not just fires. I mean, just in general, it's healthier to have fresh air. You get most houses and they've got a basement. So what is the air getting circulated in the house? It's coming from your basement. You've got a basement that's full of mold, moisture. Guess what you're pumping around your house? I don't care what kind of filter you got. You're pumping that mold and moisture all around your house.
Yep.
It's not a good thing. But we keep seeing this more and more, where we keep going towards these things that require a ton of electricity.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you got? All I've heard is a lot of mm-hmm, yep.
Well, I'm trying to think of any sort of comments I can make, really.
You got to understand, folks, we had some strong storms come through last night, and dependence on electricity is something that I am dependent on for sleeping. And we were without power for
3 hours?
Yeah, about 3 hours last night. So I'm on about 5 hours of sleep. I don't know what Ryan did, but he did something. He's not on very much sleep either because he's hurting. He actually woke up in some pain. So
yeah,
recording tonight is kind of a struggle, but we're doing it anyhow for you.
We're here for you.
So the next topic I've got.
All right, let's hear it.
This one you might actually have some comments on because I think you know what this is going to be.
Oh boy.
So, everybody knows most states, especially New York, are reopening for tourism and all kinds of other stuff after the pandemic because it's starting to come under control.
Somewhat.
Somewhat, yeah. So our brilliant governor and his administration have decided that what they're going to do, instead of focusing on, tourism for the entire state, we're going to focus on tourism for New York City. We don't care about any of the rest of the state.
Of course.
We're going to focus on New York City.
What do you expect?
So they've got commercials going like crazy where all it's doing is, oh, look at New York City. Look, you can stand by the river and look across at the city. Oh, what a beautiful cityscape. Well, you know what? I really don't think that's all that wonderful. I'm not going to go and stare at a cityscape. Sure, it's neat to see in pictures and whatnot, but it might be nice to see once in a lifetime. But, the way they're talking, I just don't get it. There's so much more money to be made by pushing the Finger Lakes region, where there's tons of wineries and where breweries are growing like crazy, so that you can actually have, there's wine tours where you rent a bus, you get a hotel, you rent a bus with a bunch of people, you go around, you hit all these wineries, you go back to your hotel, and you never drive.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Lots of money in that.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
And they've actually set it up so that there's a brewery tour. Same general thing, because there's so many microbreweries all around the Finger Lakes.
Nice.
That you can do that as well. And there's also places like cheese factories popping up all over the place, so that you can do a cheese tour along with
I gotta do one of those.
wine or with beer.
I gotta do one of those cheese tours.
And there's other things as well.
I remember commercials from like a few years ago, about 4 or 5 years ago. I didn't see any single promotion, anything that they promoted in those commercials from New York City.
Exactly.
Everything they promoted was up here.
Exactly.
The Baseball Hall of Fame, some waterfalls, nature trails,
Yeah,
and of course, the part that interested me the most, Watkins Glen International. Love that joint.
You know, and that's the thing. That's where most of the tourism comes from in the state. It's not from New York City. You know, most of it comes from people that are going around to these local places. You know, the wineries that are here. One winery. It's not like a conglomerate owns them. It's one winery owned by a family. That's it. You know, and it might be a group of people that own it, but it's just that one place. It's not, it's not a conglomerate. So, that puts money into the state. Where you look at a lot of what's down in New York City and, they're owned by big corporations. So where does the money go that they gain? It goes back to that big corporation someplace else. Support local.
Usually
Support
the
your
corporation's
farmers.
out in California.
Yeah. You got to support your farmers, your local farmers. But, our brilliant governor, no, we got to worry about New York City. They were hit really hard. You know what? They weren't hit any harder than anybody else. It's just he caters to New York City because New York City is what keeps him in office.
I really hope that he gets beaten in the primary next year.
Yeah.
I hope somebody challenges him.
Unfortunately, he won't. It's just the way that New York goes as far as politics. The only way he's going to get beat is if somebody brings up this whole thing that he had with the sexual harassment. Which how did he avoid all of that press? Well, because we've been dealing with a pandemic. So lucky him. He's
Plus, the media is quite biased towards him.
yeah.
Hint, hint, his brother works for a network as an anchor.
Yeah, and it's not even just that, Where are these...
Honestly, I'd rather have his brother as governor than him.
But where are these broadcast companies located?
Let's see. New York City. Except for CNN, which is down in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Which is basically the New York City of the South.
Yeah. But
Although Nashville is going to replace them, I hear. Nashville's getting pretty big.
Yeah, but it's not just the size of New York City, it's what it does. Because there was a long time where New York City was the largest in the world. It's not anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But it still provides a lot that other cities just don't.
Heck, I'm not even sure if they're still the largest on the continent.
I don't believe that they are, but I could be wrong. Because some of it too is, we're urbanizing more.
They are still the largest in the nation, though, but LA is not far behind.
LA is not far behind, and Canada is very urbanized. So
Yep.
I would not be surprised if there's at least one city in Canada that's not larger than New York City.
Probably Toronto.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, but I could be wrong.
Or Montreal.
But we can't just sit and focus on one city. There are 5 other major cities in New York State. Why aren't we looking at those cities? You look at Syracuse. It hosts the New York State Fair every year. This fair, it got devastated last year. The fairgrounds, they don't take any taxpayer dollars to run that.
Mm-hmm.
That's all self-funded. And we're not pushing the fair. We should be pushing that now. We should be advertising like crazy. The fair's coming up. It's open this year.
Yeah, it is.
I'm
hoping to go.
They should really push this because that's going to bring in a lot of money. That gets a lot of people from out of state to come in just for that. People who grew up in New York that always went to the fair with their families, they come back just to go to the fair. But no, we're going to push New York City.
Yep.
Idiots.
I'm honestly surprised that the fair is still at Syracuse.
Well, it's because it's self-funded.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to be self-funded, you have to be stationary. You have to be in the same place so that you have the same buildings and you have the same property.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just not going to be able to fund it.
Right.
So that's why it's still in Syracuse. Syracuse is also a crossroads between east and west highways. So you have 81 that runs north and south.
Yep.
And then you have 90, which runs east-west. Notice where the fairgrounds are. Very close to the junction.
Right next to both.
So that's why it works out so well, because it's very central to the state. And they also bought the land a long time ago. So they've got a large property. So, moving it around throughout the state was proposed at one point in time, but, then the reasons that I just said kept it here.
Yeah.
So one more topic for you.
What do we got?
We've got something that bugs me.
All right, let's hear it.
It was actually brought up on a tech podcast that I listen to. There's a guy that he works for KTLA in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
But he has a podcast called Rich on Tech.
Ah.
He's somebody who's very pro Apple, and he was all on board with these Apple.
Why am I not surprised?
He was all on board with these Apple devices. What the heck are they called? The AirTags.
AirTags?
Yeah, where you can put it on something and you'd be able to track it. But the other day, he actually surprised me with his podcast in that he started saying how everybody is against Amazon Sidewalk.
Uh-huh.
And do you know what that is?
No.
So what it is...
I'm guessing it's similar to Apple's thing?
Not really. What it is they're working with Tile, who's had tags like the AirTags for a very long time. But Amazon's working with them. So every Ring doorbell, every Ring outdoor camera is going to provide a very small piece of Wi-Fi. So it covers neighborhoods. And the point is that these AirTag or these Tile tags will now be able to connect to these things so that you can find out where your things are no matter what. Easily. And it'll do it across Apple and Android devices.
Nice.
So all kinds of journals. Oh, you need to turn this off. You got to turn it off. They're going to use up your Wi-Fi. Well, Amazon was smart with it. And they're limiting the amount of data that can be pushed through each device. So it's not gonna kill you. And it's not like people are going to be able to walk around and surf the internet. It's literally just looking at these RFIDs and saying, hey, it's over here. So his whole point was, why is everybody doing that? You can shut it off, but nobody is complaining about what Apple did with AirTags.
What did Apple do?
When they released their AirTags, they turned their Find My Network on every single Apple device.
Of course they did.
Not just iPhones. Every Macintosh, every iPad. Every single device.
Oh boy.
And nobody said anything negative about that.
Oh, that's because everyone is biased towards Apple.
Exactly. It's because they're biased with Apple. Oh, it's Apple. It's got to be good. It's got to be secure. Well, you know what? It's not so secure. And many people are finding out that, all I got to do is drop an AirTag in some lady's purse and check it in 2 hours and I'll know exactly where she is. And there's no way to tell that somebody did that.
Mm-hmm.
So they're finding that, yeah, okay, you got these things, people are doing this stuff. They're going to be able to do this. As long as you know that person comes to the same coffee shop every day, that's all it takes. The way these AirTags are set up is, if you go to the same place every day with this AirTag on you, it's going to say, oh, okay, you're going to the same place. You know it's there.
Right.
Where it goes off from that is if you go someplace different.
Ah.
So say you don't normally go to a coffee shop on Main Street.
Right.
Maybe you're just there because you're in the neighborhood. Somebody drops an AirTag in there. Well, 2 days later, you haven't gone back to that coffee shop. Now it'll start beeping. But that's 2 days. That's 2 days that somebody has all of your information. They know when you go to work. They know where you work. They know when you come home from work. Okay, so if they're not looking to attack you, they can get into your house because they know when you're not home.
Yeah.
But not only that, they know where your home is.
Exactly the problem.
So nobody said anything about that. All they're worried about is, Amazon's going to use up all your internet data. No, they're not.
Because they limit it.
So, this guy Rich, he said, I'm leaving my Amazon Sidewalk on. He said, because it's not going to use a whole lot. And if I was worried about that, then I'd be more worried about Apple and their Find My network, which they've forced to be on. And I can't turn it off. So it was quite an interesting spin to hear somebody who was all excited about these AirTags, and then all of a sudden he's like, whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah.
You people are complaining about Amazon doing the same thing? That doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't.
Yeah. All right, folks. Well, I'm about out.
So am I. I've been out.
As if you couldn't tell. All right, everybody. So,
Good night.
we'll see you.